Moving day, a bittersweet time for many families.
Come on, Sean.
Careful, because it's heavy.
And there's something about boxing all your belongings and loading them into a truck that's just a bit unsettling.
Put it right here, Sean.
But the promise of a new home in a new town can make it equally exciting. Let's jump back about a century and a half. You're moving your family across country. You sell virtually everything you own, you load the rest into a wagon. Say goodbye to friends and relatives you'll probably never see again, and you're off. The trip will take about 6 months because you're walking over 2,000 miles of sagebrush, rocks, and dust. Not exactly a trip you'll find in a travel brochure, but starting in 1843, over 300,000 Americans made that journey, most of them searching for a better life in a place they'd only heard about. 150 years later, we pay tribute to those people who created the term pioneer spirit, the brave men and women who traveled the Oregon Trail.
May 11, 1881. This was the beginning of a long and eventful journey westward to the much-talked-of Oregon Territory. The group numbered 47. Every imagination was fired with dreams and visions of a new home and fortunes to be made in the fertile West. Diary of Emily Towle.
June 25th, 1993. As the mist rises from this valley along the Idaho-Wyoming border, there is once again excitement on the Oregon Trail. Although they dress the part, these are not pioneers.
I have some serious doubts that the Oregon pioneers had this kind of food.
They are ranchers, they are teachers, they are merchants.
You know, this day and age, jets flying overhead and everything, there's still a few people down to earth, I guess.
They have come from various parts of America. They have come from overseas. Their common bond is a kinship with the men and women who settled the American West.
We've got people right now that have come in from Maryland, New York, going to spend 10 days to 2 weeks with us, camp in a tent, walk. They want to have a feeling of what our forefathers went through.
I guess everybody's about ready to go.
Geez, I'm getting too old.
The Oregon Sesquicentennial Wagon Train will cover about half the distance traveled by the Oregon Trail pioneers, but they will cover much of the same ground.
Wagon forward!
It's a history lesson on wheels, and everyone here is a student.
It's really hard to believe the trouble that they had to go through what they did.
Each hoof print, each footstep is another paragraph in their textbook.
A lot of the people walking on it and riding on it, by living it firsthand, have a better opportunity to experience the emotion, the stress that the pioneers had to get here to set up this part of the country. It's valuable for all of us to be able to see it again, to be able to feel it again.
August 25th. We encountered very dusty roads, and 5 teams and wagons really stirred up such a cloud of dust. In some places it was difficult to see the wagon traveling 150 feet in front of the other. Recollection of Sophronia Turnell Barker, 1898.
Most of day one for the wagon train was spent climbing what pioneers called the Big Hill. From the road, you can still make out the wagon ruts of the original trail. Even though this train traveled on pavement and dirt roads, it was still a difficult way to begin the journey. That made the first day all the sweeter for wagon master Jerry Schubert.
I just couldn't have asked for more. You know, when you've spent almost 2 years working on a project like this, knowing the first day was the big day, it'll be the toughest day that we'll face in the next 2.5 months. We came through with flying colors, had a lot of fun, and real pleased.
Schubert is the driving force behind this wagon train. He began pouring his heart into it long before he first shouted, "Wagons ho!"
I first would like to welcome all of you to the Roundup grounds this morning.
Last spring, he put on an educational program for school kids around Oregon.
I was chosen out of about a dozen people from around, well, as far away as Wyoming, to be the wagon master. And I've been working on this project for about 1.5 years.
His labor of love he wants to share with as many young people as he can.
Ollie? I guess because we're real interested in the Oregon Trail. We're extremely interested in history. What you see today is how we got here. I say we, our ancestors came over the Oregon Trail. There were 350,000 people, the largest migration of people that ever was.
If the kids take home one lasting memory, mission accomplished.
These kids need to know how we got here. You know, what brought the people over the Oregon Trail, what kind of animals it took to do all of it, and the hardships.
At their first stop, wagon train members are guests of honor at a party in Montpelier, Idaho.
Are you all done? Okay, we'll come back after a while. Come on.
Schubert is proud of the way his horses worked the first day on the trail. As he puts them up for the night, you realize here's a guy who was born 150 years too late.
Come here, Rusty. Come on.
He'd rather spend time with a good horse than many people he knows.
Well, I'm going to have to cut.
His values are deeply rooted in an age that he says has passed us by.
Somehow or other, we have lost contact. Maybe if it be my generation or my kids or whatever it is.
But over the next 10 weeks, Jerry Schubert hopes to rekindle some of those pioneer values.
We've lost that caring for our country and for our families and our neighborhoods, our communities. If it hadn't have been for the toughness and the caring of the people that came out here on the Oregon Trail, we wouldn't be here.
Trail of dreams, the Oregon Trail.
I know it doesn't make any sense, but if you're outside, the smells and the wind comes out of the end of the paintbrush. It really does.
Gary Stone likes to paint outside whenever he can. Lately, he's been spending a lot of time on the Oregon Trail.
It isn't as tight. Everything's looser when you're out here. You know, you can just let go. It's really fun.
Today, he's at the Milner Ruts in south central Idaho.
Brown's the color of the day.
Here, a portion of the trail has been carefully preserved. With just a little imagination, you can almost see some of the wagons that carved these ruts over a century ago. But today, Gary Stone doesn't have to imagine.
When we started this, I painted just straight around the clock. I didn't work an 8-hour day. It was eat, sleep, and paint for many, many, many months on end.
This is the project of a lifetime for Stone, a series of paintings that show what life may have been like on the Oregon Trail.
Spokes. 14 on the back and 12 on the front.
He's a stickler for detail, and if it's authenticity you want...
Every painting has Oregon Trail dust mixed in with it. They for sure do.
This project has been a major part of Gary Stone's life for over a year.
It's one of them things that if I'm away from it a few minutes, I can hardly wait to get back to it again. I don't know, it consumes you.
The story is written in each one of these, and these were taken from diaries. Taken from the actual diaries, and he went to the location, and then he painted each picture.
At the Twin Falls County Fairgrounds, passers-by admire Gary Stone's paintings, as well as a book he did with his wife, Bev.
He and his wife uncovered their family diary for us and was kind enough to loan it to us. So we got to base a lot of the paintings on that diary.
Diary entries and family recollections have helped the Stones to depict day-to-day life along the trail. The boredom, the hardship, the grief, and the joy felt by the pioneers. One painting in particular hits very close to home for the Stones.
Now, did I lie? Is this something or what? We just have the one falls now, but this is where I made that painting from.
This is home for Bev and Gary Stone. They own several hundred acres along the Snake River Canyon. They say many of the diary entries they read in researching their book prove that pioneers crossed this land.
It's just taken me years to develop an eye to where you can look at something like this and tell that it's really a grave.
Some, they feel, are still here.
But this is real old. It just feels that way almost.
The Stones have developed a closeness with these ghosts of the Oregon Trail. It leaves them wishing for a chance to talk with them, if only for a moment.
I would ask them if it was worth all the effort, if what they found in their new life was worth what they had gone through. I have an idea they'd tell me no.
But here are two people very thankful the Oregon Trail has crossed their lives.
I feel real humble when we come out here and get to see all these things that we just feel like the luckiest people in the world.
One picture you won't find in Gary Stone's Oregon Trail series is this sketch of a runaway wagon. If you want to hear about it, just ask wagon master Jerry Schubert.
And all of a sudden, out of the weeds that were about 4 feet high, this little calf just leaped up like a jack-in-the-box. It really startled the left leader. I grabbed the lines to get the other leader back in the road. Everything looked like settled down, and Sam took one more look at this calf, and God, that's all she wrote.
Schubert and a companion were thrown from their wagon. A hairline fracture of the hip was enough to put the wagon master in the hospital.
150 years ago, had that happened, what in the world did they do with anybody? Must have put them in a wagon and hoped to God they made it.
This wagon train would continue on without its leader, but not for long.
I would like to think maybe by the time we got to Pendleton, Oregon, I could hook my outfit back up and go on the rest of the way.
Upon first view, these were strange-looking people. Their children were barefoot, their clothes were tattered, they were so tired and hungry, we felt sorry for them. The tribes of the Umatilla.
Stories of Indian attacks on the Oregon Trail are greatly exaggerated. Truth is, the natives were a much greater help to the immigrants than a hindrance.
Good morning. We offer you a safe trip through this land, to our land.
And no tribe was more helpful than the Umatilla. As the train enters the Umatilla Reservation, a peaceful demonstration is staged.
We are symbolically holding this train hostage as we feel the interpretive center is being held hostage by Congress.
For every settler that came west on the Oregon Trail, the Native American lost a little more of his land, a little more of his way of life. The Umatillas want federal funding for an interpretive center to tell their side of the story. Anton Minthorn is a tribal leader.
It is not that I become a white person or have a white person's outlook on life. It's just the other way around, is that white people have got to become Indians in their outlook on life.
I ask you now, will you once again help us down off this mountain and guide us through your land?
The wagon train is off to an early start for the ride into Pendleton. True to his word, Jerry Schubert is back on the lead wagon.
We're getting ready for the grand reopening of Main Street.
And the folks in Schubert's hometown are rolling out the red carpet.
The wagon train's about ready to come down Main Street.
October 18th, 1843. At about noon, reached a place on one of the principal streams where I had determined to leave the emigrant trail in the expectation of finding a more direct and better road across the Blue Mountains. The Journal of John C. Fremont.
In the mid-1800s, explorer John C. Fremont was commissioned by the U.S. government to blaze new trails for pioneers headed west.
Did they use a sextant? Did they use a marine?
He must have to get those longitude readings that he has there.
Armed with a copy of Fremont's journal and a set of modern topographical maps, 83-year-old Gerald Swaggart and his friend Earl Rother are out in search of Fremont's trail.
Here's where we are now and where he stayed last night.
That was the night of October 19th and 20th, 1843.
Fremont and frontiersman Kit Carson were searching for an offshoot of the Oregon Trail, one that would lead settlers into Walla Walla. According to Fremont's journal, complete with latitude and longitude readings, they came right through this spot.
October 22nd, 1843. We were here on the western verge of the Blue Mountains, long spurs of which, very precipitous on either side, extended down into the valley. On our right was a mountain plateau covered with a dense forest, and to the westward, immediately below us, was the great Nez Perce, or pierced-nosed prairie. Yeah, they must have come on out of off the top of the Blues, down that fairly open ridge.
Fremont's trail led to a toll road, which settlers used for years to come.
Charles H. Petrie was murdered here November 9th, 1892.
The Oregon Trail is littered with the graves and the stories of the men and women who settled the West, and then there were men like John C. Fremont.
He must have been a very persistent and a very knowledgeable man.
Men who made it possible for those stories to be told.
I'm happy that somebody came through first so my folks could get through.
July 1864. Once there was a little new grave with pebbles all around and a small board at the head with these words carved. Tread lightly, stranger. Here lies our little Nellie. Diary of Aline Taylor Dunham.
There are over 30,000 graves along the Oregon Trail. That means that 1 out of 10 immigrants who began the journey never reached that better life they were hoping for. Many of those who made it this far had buried a loved one somewhere along the way. They had survived disease, starvation, wild animals, and nearly 2,000 miles of harsh trail. Yet here, on the final leg of the journey, 2 of the greatest obstacles remained in front of them: the Cascade Mountains and the Columbia River. The Columbia was not on the itinerary for this wagon train, but one of the highlights of their trip was crossing the John Day River.
Elizabeth Julia Goltra in 1853. We took the right hand, it being the nearest, and we reached the river about 3 o'clock. We crossed and...
Sunday the 15th of August 1993, early noon, and we turn right, leaving the gravel road upon which we'd been travelling onto the real trail and the original ruts.
Sue Smith came from England to walk this trail and to get a first-hand taste of the American West.
Well, I was brought up on a diet of wagon train and bonanza and Little House on the Prairie and things.
She is one of a horde of walkers who have joined this train.
I've walked from Pendleton, which means I've got in about 170 miles so far.
To walk in the footsteps of the pioneers.
As we journeyed along the trail, I wondered how many graves we walked over. A grave every 80 to 100 yards.
And now they are on the final leg of their journey.
This morning, ladies and gentlemen, we're cruising down 5th.
Our captain has asked that you keep your seatbelts tightened.
The closer they get to their destination, the closer these wagon train members get to each other.
There's a real bond, and right now we've got about 2 weeks left, and it's countdown time. And it's very bittersweet.
Like the original pioneers, this wagon train travels about 16 miles a day. And like their forebearers, they have become family.
Is there anybody here who has any reason why this here couple should not be joined in matrimony? Please let him speak his piece now, and I hope he's got a shotgun. Boyer and Rosemary, by the power invested in me, I now pronounce you hitched.
It's strange how quickly on the trail becomes a way of life, and how one place and one town merges into the next and becomes just another day on the trail.
"1843,
Here we are at last, Oregon City, that long looked for place. Diary of Esther Hanner.
In 1845, a pioneer named Samuel Barlow built a road that led emigrants through the Cascade Mountains and into the Willamette Valley.
Oh, I'm feeling great. I rode yesterday. I'm going to ride horse again today. I'm ready to go.
Nearly 150 years later, Jerry Schubert is ready to lead his wagon train the final few miles into Oregon City. It's a safe bet the original pioneers didn't receive the greeting this train will get, but they know the exhilaration they feel is close to what their ancestors felt over a century ago.
Because we were all for the same goal, and that was to reach Oregon City. I know that's how a lot of those pioneers started out. They had a lot of religious differences, a lot of ethnic background differences, but they all had one goal in common, and that was to reach Oregon City.
May this be a joyous day of new beginnings, of better things to come for you and your loved ones. Welcome to the end of the Oregon Trail.
Oh, here you got to break up now, and that's the hard part.
There's been a kind of a togetherness, sense of family, a sense of pulling through something together, realizing some connections with the past. This is something that those of us who've been lucky enough to be a part of it will always carry with us.
A piece of history they relived, and one they hope will be passed along for many years to come.
Here in 1924, workers dug up a wagon box casket of an immigrant woman, and after she was reburied, a cross was placed in tribute to this unknown pioneer.
How did she die?
Well, she was very sick. It was a long, hard journey.
And so the trail ends.
Where would you like to put it for the lady?
But the legacy lives on.
Oh, that's very nice, honey.